Hi, great to have you here. Today I want to take a look at a Big Bad Toy Store order that I got in. I ordered this sometime last year and just got this guy in. As you can probably tell from the title, this is a Godzilla -1 Ichiban statue. Really looking forward to taking a look at this guy. So with that, let's jump right in and open him up. Alright, now that we have the cardboard box open, here's what the inside looks like. Looks really well packaged. The Godzilla box itself looks a lot bigger than I expected. So let's jump right in and take a look at that box. After taking off the plastic wrap, here's what the box looks like at first glance. Alright, now that we have him out of the shipping box, let's take a look at the packaging itself. As I mentioned, this box looks a lot bigger than I expected. You can see the front here, we have a couple images of Godzilla, one from farther away looking to the side, the other one close up looking to the side as well. Really cool imaging there. Looking on the other side here, we have that same kind of side angle shot with some text as well. Really great looking figure overall here. Top, we just have general language. On this side, wow, this graphic is awesome. This is probably the best graphic on the box. Just that kind of angle of Godzilla with the background as well. Really cool look there. Overall in the back, we just have a couple more shots of him far away, some of the promo shots close up to the side as well, and then him from the back side, then your typical language at the bottom. Nothing on the bottom of the box, just standard black cardboard there. So overall, really like the look of this box. It's pretty simple, pretty plain, but it gets the job done as highlighting the figure itself. I like this cover in the front. That side image as well is what I especially like. So with that, let's jump right into looking at the figure more in depth. Alright, almost there. So here's what Godzilla looks like in his clamshell. You can kind of see the massive size of him, and the tail especially is such a long addition to Godzilla. Alright, final step here. We have Godzilla in the plastic wrap here. Let's take him out and ultimately look at him in all of his glory.
Godzilla?
I gotta say, after having this guy out of the packaging, this looks amazing. I'm not typically overly a statue enthusiast, but this really captures the look of Godzilla from the -1 movie. Looking at his head, we have very ferocious look there. That iconic look of him in the ocean as well, kind of looks like with his head just peeking out. The mouth is pretty well done. I know some of the gums look a little bit choppy with how they're painted as far as the white teeth and the red gums, but I think that's more than okay, essentially. Obviously, when you get a statue or any collectible in general, you get a little bit of variety depending on which specific one you have. So understand that that's kind of par for the course when it comes to that. I will say the side of his gums look like not as well detailed in the paint there. We have a little bit of overpaint of the silver on the gums as well, and some of the teeth on that side as well are a little bit imperfect, but I think that's more than justifiable, granted all the other greatness that he's ultimately showing off here. When creating the look for Godzilla in -1, I think they did a really great job at ultimately picking something that accurately represents kind of the origin of Godzilla and the appearance that he had in the first movie, but also the evolvement and great special effects and utilization of kind of modernizing the aesthetic of Godzilla in a way that still represents the creature we had back then, but makes it so much more menacing in this version of Godzilla. I do really like the kind of splash of green that we get on Godzilla as well. We have these, obviously his kind of gray undertone, but then in addition to that, we have these swampy green colors that you can especially see on his chest. It's on his arms, on his spikes, on his legs. So it's kind of all throughout there, just kind of flaked on, just showing that kind of variety of textures in this Godzilla figure that matches with the movie as well. Taking a look at his hands and legs here, I really like the detail on his fingers and his toes as well. As mentioned before, where they kind of have that splash of multiple colors going on there that just matches the aesthetic of the movie. Jumping back to his spine, essentially, we have these dorsal fins, these spikes on his back. Some of these are a little bit looser than others. The ones that are the larger ones are more wiggly, where they have some give to them, essentially. It looks like one of mine is a little bit bent in a couple places. Not a major deal, but Obviously, as I mentioned, you get a little bit of variety depending on which figure you ultimately get. The spikes that are more close and smaller to his body, those are more firm and less, wiggling around. So those are more locked in place. So just a little bit of difference in the spikes that he has on his back, essentially. You can definitely tell there's a few parts where there's definitely more blended, like his arms look more blended with his body versus his head and his leg, especially if you look at his head on the back. There's spots where you can tell, like, that's clearly a separate piece that's included there. I don't think it's overly distracts from the figure. It's just kind of an observation. But overall, I mean, what else can I say? This matches the movie extremely well. This looks awesome. This is a great piece to have on your shelf in remembrance of the Godzilla -1 movie overall. I do think it's awesome which pose they ultimately chose for this statue. Obviously, non-articulated, you have to deal with a limited option that this is going to stay in forever. I think they picked a really great choice here. This is from when Godzilla's in destroying the city. We have a protagonist who just lost his significant other, and Godzilla's just wreaking havoc on the town there. And you can see as he's powering up. I'll share an image as well, kind of a similar viewpoint of this. It's when he's just really starting to destroy all of the areas, and it's kind of the ramp up of the film when it comes to, leading towards that climax final battle. We do have another variant of this that's coming out. He's actually available for pre-order now. It's the same statue, just with the blue spikes and then blue from his mouth as if he's charging up his heat ray. So that is an option available. I know this one's probably a little bit tougher to find at this point since it's been released previously, but that one also, I've debated which one looked cooler. I essentially went with this standard release, but for folks that may be interested, that may be an option that is, a little bit different variety that may be more your liking. As I mentioned when opening them up, the tail is massively large. With any Godzilla figure, you always kind of challenge with the tail technically should be extremely long, but also the focus of the figure is Godzilla himself. The tail's less of the focal point, but you want to make sure it's realistically the same length that it would be in the movie, essentially. So I think they do a really good job having that kind of wrapped around, and it's not overly taking up space, but it's an amount that is reasonable for the size of the Godzilla figure overall. I will say that Godzilla -1 probably wound up being my favorite Godzilla movie to this point. I realize people have their preferences, whether they like the serious, dark tone of Godzilla or the more silly, friendly version of Godzilla. I think both can work. As you can tell, like with the Showa era, we definitely had a bit of a different turn eventually with how Godzilla got characterized over time. But as I said, I think both versions of Godzilla ultimately work, but this -1 version may be the very best Godzilla. I'll refrain from just kind of repeating myself, and I'll just give more so a video highlights of the figure from different angles, from the front, the back, and the sides, and so forth. So for the sake of just not being redundant, I'm not going to just repeat how awesome and how sick this figure looks. I'll just allow the figure to do the talking for itself here. I will say from the box, it does look like the right side of his mouth is supposed to be a little bit different than the left side, in that it's a little bit more missing teeth and so forth. It still looks a little weird with the paint on the red on the teeth and the gums not necessarily having the right coloring, but it appears that the alignment of the teeth makes sense. I do want to do a size comparison. I know the box mentions this Godzilla is around 9 inches tall. I measured it out. It looks like that's about what it is to his head. His back spike there, maybe just a slightly taller, but 9 inches seems right. Up against Goku, I know I've done SH Figure Arts Dragon Ball content previously, so for the sake of comparison here, we have a Saiyan Raised on Earth Goku size comparison. Definitely looks a lot smaller. Like, I think the SH Figure Arts scale is 6 inches. I know Goku himself may be more like 5-something inches. But as a comparison against Godzilla, he looks a lot smaller than that. But it does seem like he's, roughly half or 60% size-wise compared to Godzilla. So a little bit difference there, just kind of explaining kind of the size comparison and what it will look like potentially against other things you may have on your shelf. So that sums up this review. Overall, I think this guy is amazing. I think there's great detail there with, overall capturing that aesthetic from the Godzilla -1 film. You have this overpowering presence that you can just feel with the statue. The detail with the painting of the gray and the greens mixed together, the detail on his mouth, and just the ferocity that you can see in his face, just the anger, just the destruction that he's about to ensue. I think it's a great figure overall. I think it's an excellent addition. If you're at all a fan of the Godzilla -1 film or Godzilla figures in general, this is one I heavily endorse and recommend picking up. As mentioned, there is a variant that's coming out as well. You could take a look at that as well. I know people dabble in the SH Monster Arts and the Haya Toys and Super 7, all kinds of different things. Those are obviously more at the articulated side of things. If you want more of the statue where you're limited in articulation, but you get a clean, clear, great designation of what Godzilla represents in that movie, this is the perfect fit for you. So overall, what do you guys think? Is this statue something that you think is worth picking up? What were your thoughts on some of the details there? Any issues you may have with him as well? Would love to hear that in the comments below. Any additional Godzilla thoughts as well? Anything you expect in the future when it comes to any of those other lines, or anything you want? Would love to just chat about all things Godzilla in the comments below. So with that, thanks for your time, and hope to talk to you again soon.